Wes Wyatt. What is up, brother?
Oh, I am still recovering from just a tiny little bit of the funk. I'm not sure what to call it, but there's something there. But other than that, life is grand. How are you doing?
I will start calling you Wesley Funk Wyatt. I got to be careful with that one. Whew,
Yeah,
that was almost scary.
That sounds almost like a WWE guy or something.
It does. It does. Which you could be one.
I could.
I mean, I was just
I'm
with
big
you.
enough.
So, yeah, I was just with you. I felt very safe walking the streets of Cincinnati, by the way.
Yeah, other people cross the street when I start coming, right?
Yeah. I did the best I could to not get a little mouthy just for fun, just to see what would happen. But
That's right.
I decided not to. So yeah, we spent some time together, man. It's always great to spend some personal time with you, brother.
It was great, and I said this on the last one. I'm going to say it again because I love giving kudos and edification to my buddies. But it's always amazing to work with somebody that people are coming up and just saying, hey, giving you the finger guns from across the way, coming up for a bro hug, and man, every couple minutes at the show, somebody was coming up and talking to you, and it wasn't just you. It was multi-generational. It was, I knew your dad, I knew your uncle, I knew your brother, I knew your grandfather. I mean, it was just, it was amazing. So I had as good of a time as you said you had. I had even better.
Well, then my mission was complete. And,
right.
and thank you for that. It's great to hear, and I appreciate it. Unnecessary, but thank you. But that is the big reason right there of why I love what I do and do what I love, right? Is I get to be with people that I call them customer friends a lot, but that is really what they are. And what I mean is I really get to spend time with these people that I've got to know their kids and they're gone to their church school graduations and all those kind of things. So anyways, it makes it great. And speaking about hanging with somebody that you and I both know quite well and consider a great friend and just an all around great guy, and wrote an incredible book, which is a little glare, and has more coming. Let's just, go talk to Gary. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea.
Let's do it.
All right.
Brother Gary, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing excellent. How are you today, Randy?
It'd be tough to be any better. I mean, I just got to talk to Wes twice today, and now I get to talk to my friend and brother and pal Gary. I mean, it almost doesn't get better now.
Well, it doesn't. I tell you what, it's the best thing is having great friends in the work environment. It's what I think drives me and motivates me so much is the friendships that it really gets to where it's not work. It's just, it's serving others and helping other people and seeing their successes. So it's wonderful. It's an awesome.
It is awesome. So I should officially introduce you as the host of Mindset Growth Podcast, and Heather Molinex. Did I get that correct?
Molinex, yes.
Molinex, yeah.
My co-host.
Your co-host. All right. A great show once a week, at least, if not more.
Yes.
Mindset Growth Podcast.
She does all the hard work and the heavy lifting. I just show up and do a lot of the talking.
So it's a lot like my relationship with Wes, my producer, director, buddy, pal, occasional bodyguard. And he did not steal any food this week because I offered it to him before he got a chance. But because I knew he was eyeing that meatball. I know he was. But that's the same way I feel with Wes, right? He does all the heavy lifting. I show up here and talk to people for a while, which as a lifelong 4+ decade long guy in the sales world, that's what I do best. Probably the only thing I do well. So
connect with people.
That's it. That's what it all. So you have a podcast, which we'll talk about, but you just released your first book, Little Glare from the Lights, 12 Steps to Achieve Your Maximum Potential by Gary Bontrager. And it's really cool. This is cool. I was so thrilled when you asked me to write a little blurb on the back of the book. That was real cool. That was exciting. I always like to add new things to my what have you done, right? And that was way cool. So, but you promised to write one for me in my book that I'm working on. So
that's right. You just give me the word and I'll an idea what it's about and I'll put it together.
All right, I'll just write something nice about myself, and you can just sign it. How's
You can rubber stamp it.
Yeah, there you go. That's all I need. Well, good. Well, so let's just get right to it. Tell us about the book, because I know your story means I can probably go take a nap and come back, because your story is very compelling. The book is so easy to read and so well written, and I truly enjoyed it. When I got it in the mail, Gary, and I appreciate getting my signed copy right there. You can't see it with
Yes.
the glare. Um, I started reading it that evening, and I didn't put
Awesome.
it down. I think I read it in 2 nights, maybe three, but I
Awesome.
read fast. But it was very well written. So tell us about how this whole thing started, what it's about, what to expect.
I'm going to go back just a little bit into really my childhood and talk about it there because that's really where this book started. And it's I still get emotional talking about this, but I grew up in a small community, went to a small country school, and I had a learning disability. It's never been diagnosed, so I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I don't learn like a lot of people do. I learn more visually. And then I have other ways that I know I need to write things out and do things. But I didn't enjoy formal education, which I'm sure a lot of kids don't.
I was right
However,
there.
however, with that all being a part of my school background, I wasn't necessarily considered the smart kid in school because I certainly limboed under my talent of what I or abilities of what I really had. With that, my father had some health issues, and when he was 15, he passed from a heart attack. And we grew up, or I grew up. There was 8 kids in the family. The oldest couple were gone. I kind of outlined that in the book just a little bit about that and that whole scenario and setting when that happened. But at 15 years old, the setting I was in, there was no support really for me as a person. My younger brothers had some adults and some men that kind of showed some interest and helped do things with them. And it drove me down really rapidly, mentally and emotionally, to the point I wasn't sure if I wanted to choose to live or die.
Hmm.
And it was my father was an extremely positive person who always had time for people, which is probably where I get my love for people. And I also am still reap the rewards of how he treated people. So that was always something that it was one of those things you knew to look people in the eye, shake their hand, be courteous, take time for those that are disadvantaged. He's done that. He did that all his life, and we just learned that, or I learned that by example. There was a day it all just kind of come to head for me on the farm. The pressure got to me, and I just jumped in the farm truck and I left, kind of leaving my brothers and everybody around high and dry because we had a busy day planned. And I drove down the road. I couldn't tell you, probably 10 miles, went to a place I'd never been before. And I sat under a tree that day, contemplating my, miserable plight in life that I had gotten to, not understanding and making sense. There was no grief counseling,
Hmm.
um, and just trying to sort out in life what I was, what could I do? Because up to that point, with my education, my father always felt was there to kind of have my back and support me and help me. If you do this, you do that, you're going to be okay. I'll work with you. You can farm with me and just different things like that. And it was when I realized that, well, now I won't be farming. It's just family dynamics. Everything I thought I would do as an adult just disappeared. I knew there were other, just the dynamics with parents and all, I would never be there. Uh, and he told me one thing that day, and I will just say this because I want any dad out there or mother, any parent that's listening to this. He told me that one day I'd have a beautiful family. And as I'm sitting there trying to contemplate, what I felt was most important to do next, live or die, I chose life because of the words of my father, because I couldn't do what he told me I would if I chose the other. And so I just want to share that because people are important and we really can impact people with our words. There's ways to encourage in a more, strong arm type of method. There's other ways you just got to be gracious and really just not ask the questions and support them. But when I made that decision, I made one other decision that followed right behind it. And I didn't understand it at all, but I had a vision that day. I completely could see it in my head that someday I'd be doing something so much bigger than myself. And that was, I committed that day also to learning something new every day. So my joke really is when I quit going to school, I did not graduate the 8th grade, but when I quit going to school after 9 years, I couldn't spell shit. And the truth is, I couldn't spell it.
Wow.
That was at 15 years old. At 21 years old, I found myself in another state, and I got promoted into being a service manager at a car dealership, and I had to fill out work orders. And trust me, you will stay up all night long to learn how to fill out a work order when you get an opportunity like that. Mm-hmm. It was also at that time I bought a Zig Ziglar book that forever changed my life and shifted my self-development into a whole different role, and just how important that became. And that's when I started buying books and really investing in myself in a whole different way, because I didn't even understand self-help at that point, or personal development things. So out of all that, this book is really the 12 steps that I had to go through, because I became a extremely bitter, angry, and hurtful person when I went through that experience that I just shared. Losing my father and just that whole process. And these are the 12 steps. They're very basic, so it's an easy read, but those are the 12 steps I needed to go through to overcome all the negative patterns. I just always assumed if somebody was going to open their mouth and speak, it was not going to be positive. I mean, I had my guard up all the time. I was resentful, just a lot of things I had to deal with. Some of those things I still probably struggle with to some degree. But that's what the motivation was behind this book. If I can help and anyone else, and I've run into people now when I'm doing a book signing or something, they'll come up and they're like, yeah, we lost a parent at a young age. We've experienced this. We lost a child. We lost a spouse. So the thing is, though, I have learned from that experience, and it totally changed who I am and how I now give back to my community and the world that I live in. So I don't know if that's a long introduction to maybe why I wrote the book. It's probably something I never thought I could do, and yet I had a desire to do it, and I felt it was necessary.
Well,
so
I can tell you from reading the book that I mentioned, I read it in 2 nights, and you did such a great job of the story you just told. I probably could have told that story for you, because you did it so well and laid it out so well in the book. And I think it was very important to go back to where it came from, because you did such a great job of establishing the credibility to why you have these 12 steps, right? Because without those, everybody's got their 12-step program, the 10-step. Anybody can. It's almost like Wes and I were talking about this the other day. Anybody can rent a Lamborghini and park it in front of $1 million, $10 million home, and grab a couple supermodels, and then they all go away, and then you throw money in the air, and you're some sort of an expert, right?
Right.
But where's the cred, right?
Right.
And you dig deeper, and most of the time there is no cred. Right. But so I think you did such a great job of, people want to hear the real story. And after listening to your story or reading your story, I was captivated by what's next. And I really was. I enjoyed it immensely. So I think the way you laid that out is good. And let's face it, we all want to reach maximum potential. We don't always realize that we want to reach that. But one thing I want to jump real quick. You said about so many people don't even know that. You said that it didn't even know self-help exists. I mean, what even is that? Isn't it a large percentage of people don't understand that there is some answer beyond just where you're at? Wherever your lot in life is. Not many people say, oh, that's just my lot in life. Well, we don't live in a caste system here in the U.S., right? It's not your lot in life. Your lot in life is what you decided to be. It may take a lot of work. Less fair is fair. It's Some people are just born into it being easier than others. I get all that. But I don't care. Look, you can take two people from opposite sides of the political spectrum, if you will, Rush Limbaugh and Oprah
Yes.
Winfrey, right?
Right.
And you can love or hate either of them. Probably a lot of that on each side, right? That they're
Right.
pretty much as far apart as you'd get, right? But the one thing you got to say is they failed and failed and failed and failed and failed and failed. Most people would have gave up way before they did, right?
Right.
So it's surprising to me because along with your story, my dad was very huge influence. And the book I'm writing right now, I talk a lot about being raised on the farm too. That's one of the things that has drawn me to your story as well. Is he didn't die at an early age. I was luckily 39 before that happened, but
Right.
the lessons early on the farm
Yes.
and that calm. This is just step by step what we do. But so many people don't have that. So how do you help when you're talking to people to understand that there is pretty much anything to accomplish if you want to do it?
Well, there's a couple of things. Back, you had a couple of questions you hit on, and the one is just when I'm talking to people, even and they talk about self-help and what that is, I find that interesting because I didn't know what that was. And just my story was I'm a service manager, and I'll come back to your other question, but I
Mm-hmm.
was a service manager at a dealership. They get slammed up front. They come up back and they tell me, this skinny, scared 21-year-old kid, they say, we need help selling cars up there. Now, I could talk to anybody, but this was something new to me. And so I go up, I don't know what to do, feel like I failed miserably. So that night when I got off work, I decided at that point I had, knowing there were, bookstores and things, that there probably was some advice out there long before Google. And I'm in a new town, and I just got in the car and I just drove until I finally found a bookstore about 25 miles away. I probably passed many to get there, but this one was on a main road and I found it. I walk in and I asked the lady, which self-help is kind of the word that came up, but I asked the lady, I said, I need a book that's going to teach me how to sell something because I don't like to fail. I always wanted to try to do my homework. And I learned that kind of, at that age when I lost my father, I learned I can always prepare. And if I'm more prepared than somebody that has more ability than me, I will still outperform them.
Right.
So I didn't want to go into another situation where I was supposed to go help them sell cars and I didn't know what I was doing. And so I tell her, she goes, well, what were you trying to sell? I said, well, car, it was a car today, but anything.
Right.
And she just kind of looks at me and she goes, you mean like a self-help book? And I quote, I have no idea what self-help is, but if you've got a book that'll teach me how to sell, I'll buy it. And she walked me to the self-help section, and the boldest print I could find was a book by Zig Ziglar. It just says Ziglar on selling. And I read that book. I know it was within 48 hours. I had it complete. Like that was what I did. And it changed that course. But back to that is if you go back into my book, the very first chapter is the power of goals. And just so the audience knows, I'm writing a lot of it's done. It'll be finished by the end of the year, but I've got a workbook that comes with this book. And we are now taking companies or individuals through it's about a 6-month program to do a teaching process on personal development and personal growth on the 12 steps to reach your maximum potential. It's just a personal growth product that we've got that we use in our consulting business that companies use to help just, elevate their people and perform at a higher level. So the first chapter alone just talks about the power of setting goals. But there's 2 lessons before we ever get to setting goals. And the first one simply is figure out your life mission statement. I believe once we know what our life mission statement is and what we are driven and created to do on this earth, that will clear up our goals tremendously. Because I've worked with clients to where they're like, once we go through that process of figuring out our mission statement for our life, we've got to reset our goals because, I'm going to the right in business and my mission statement's off the other side. And then the second thing that we go through in the next lesson is our core values. So now we know that we're going to serve other people. We want to do something bigger than ourselves. I mean, it can be a, variety of things, but how are we going to do that? Is our job just to, is our mission just to make a lot of money? So now we're going to try to take advantage of everybody we can to just get the money. No, we want to be ethical. We want to be moral. Then you could set 5 or 6 core values, and then we get to the goals. And I think there's a lot said anymore about folks who set goals, and they really push you to do that. But the goals are really just the GPS to get us to our end destination. And our end destination is not necessarily the goal, because we could have multiples. We will have, we'll break goals down into shorter sections. They may be a month. They may be 75 days for you, which you're almost accomplishing. It may be 5 years, 10 years. It could be, age 85. Where do we want to be at that point? 100, things like that. So that's a little bit the gist behind the book. And I don't know if that answered your question really on that, but that was some more motivation behind the book. And then it's also, as we go through the book chapter by chapter, we start at that point. So the chapters are strategically in order as we get through the book, as you kind of cap off and round that out.
Well, and you hit on something, Gary, that fits right into the wheelhouse of the way I think. And I think it's important to talk about is of course, as sales guys or gals, and everybody's in sales, right? No matter what you do.
Right.
You're always, I mean, I've had guys say, I'm not in sales. Well, do you have a wife? Yeah. And I said, well, take a look at yourself, buddy.
Right.
You were in sales, right? I mean, that just didn't happen. Okay. You
Right.
did a little sales job there. I don't care if you're the pastor of your church, you're in sales from the standpoint of you're selling whatever, whether it's God, Christ, whatever the religion is, you're still selling that concept of we got to get together, come together, do good. Right. But I think that any part of sales all comes back to, and if we lose sight of this, I think it's important. And you hit on it earlier. Are we doing it just to be massively successful, just to buy the big cars and the extra car and the new house on the lake and all these things? That's an important part, and it's something we strive for and it's goals. But I happen to believe that we'll never do all of the thousands of other things that we need to be successful if we don't deep down do it for the reason that you said of, I just want to take care of Gary Bontrager today, who's going to honor me potentially with doing some business together, right? I owe you that. And if we don't bring it back to that, it becomes transactional, right? And I think you'll agree and I think customers should fear that word as much as sales guys do. When it becomes transactional, we both end up losing or certainly not gain as much as we can, right?
100%. The big thing with that, I will tell people this all the time, because my whole life has developed into sales, and I believe certainly that's the case for everyone, whether they believe it or not. But the fact is simply this: people do business with people.
Right.
And if all you're doing is making a transaction, you're not performing or acting as a salesperson. You're simply just taking orders.
Mm-hmm.
And it really breaks down the relationship and the interaction, and is probably going to break down and lower your revenue and things like that. Because a lot of, when you're truly in the act of sales, it's typically some commissions and things involved. And I will see people, and I'm sure you see this all the time, people will spend more money, ask a lot less questions when there's that relationship and interaction, and they don't feel like they're actually being sold something. They feel like they're doing business with a friend. There's a huge difference. And I mean, there's different books out there that talk about, how to connect, how quickly to connect. I guess I don't know that it's down to a science, and I've not researched that. I just know that it doesn't really matter who my opponent that I would be up against, my competitor, I should say. If I can connect with the client better than the other person, it's likely going to be business with me.
Well,
And it's that way
exactly.
for you too, I'm sure.
Well, exactly, because everything that either of us do, there's other places to get it, whatever it
Right.
is, right? Your services, your consulting, there's other people that do consulting. I,
Oh,
I have
completely.
building materials, and everything I have, there's a whole bunch of other people that have whatever widget it is we want to talk about today, right?
Right.
And I like to tell people is the one clear thing that you will get that I have 100% control over, and I am out of 8 billion people on planet Earth, I am the absolute number one best at, right? Is being Randy. That's the
That's
one thing
right.
that I can bring you that they can't. I'm not saying they won't bring you good. I'm not saying they might
Right.
not be equally good. They might be better. I don't know. But I can tell you that nobody will work harder for you. And I mean, and I think if you take that route, as opposed to it needs to be a win. You know, it's an old cliche, right? But it does need to be a win-win for us to do business together. Because if it's not a win for you as the customer, you're going to leave sooner or later. And
Right.
if it's not a win for me as the supplier, manufacturer, whatever the case may be, sooner or later I'm going to leave you because it just doesn't make sense to do business this way, right? So I think if we can foster that, and I don't know if unfortunately is the word, but that falls back on more the sales guy or gal's shoulders than it does the other way because of the nature of the relationship. Is I think we need to foster this trust, and I'm not here just to sell you something. I would
Right.
like to at the end of the day if it makes sense, but I also want to sell you in your business and in mine because I'm a B2B guy. I like to tell people I do have to have the first order before we go to the next, but I'm not looking for the first order, right? I'm looking for 3 years from now,
Right.
5 years from now. And I'm looking for generational when your son comes into play at 23 and he starts taking over more of the business. I
Right.
want to build those relationships, right? So I think that's if we can't lose track of the fact that I should back up. We get too engaged as sales guys sometimes with commission breath, right? The
Oh,
transaction.
right.
I just want to sell this $40,000 deal so I make $2,000 or something, right? And they forget all the other stuff that goes with it. And then they become what I think you were starting to say earlier there was if you're just an order taker, I don't want that position, but that can be replaced tomorrow.
Right.
If all you're going to do is write down, I want 10 of these and 12 of these and 15 of those and go to the next phone call, that's not what's going to work to build long-term relationships. Agree?
No, I agree completely. Relationships are they're huge in life in general in so many aspects. And I think a lot of what happens so many times, and I can't even say who said this anymore, and maybe it's been passed around so much, but you can have anything in life you want if you're willing to help somebody else get what they want. And I think a lot of times when I sit down with even coaching clients, we go through all the questions. What is it that you want to accomplish? Because we work with a lot of family businesses and transitioning, from one generation to the next. How do you do that? There's multiple family members. Only one or two are going to be involved in the business. Everybody else going to be treated fairly, relationships intact. Here's the thing. A lot of times, if you can go through that process and help them understand what the value is to them. So in your case, you mentioned $2,000 in commission. But if you just, as a salesperson, all of a sudden go to them and say, what is it you want to accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can respond with, well, here's what I can do so that you can reach that goal.
Right.
And here's the process. If you can find more clients like that, we can just keep doing this over and over and make this really easy for you. So I think a lot of times, if we can take the focus off of ourselves and take it onto the help them solve their problem rather than us trying to solve ours. And that's where I'm at. There's nothing wrong with a beachfront home and all those things. I mean, those are awesome. I think people should have those goals. I think people should work hard to have the nice cars and the things they want. But I think there needs to be a balance in what the value is of those things. And I can tell you the reason I often talk about a life mission statement is if you start thinking about age 85, if you start thinking about, of course, you and I are old enough now. We've probably lost our parents,
Yes.
now. And so we've went through that process.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the relationships that our parents left behind, and maybe there's others listening to this, they've had friends and things like that. I can promise you when it comes right down to the end of a wonderful long life, the thing that still gets talked about is, you remember that day when this happened? That was so
Right.
funny. Or
Right.
this happened. They treated that person with so much dignity and grace. And, those are the things that really come back to the ultimates that are important in life. So I think that's where I come back to that whole life mission. It's important. It's a piece that it took me way too long to figure out. I have found I'm far more successful now because I've adjusted my focus. Went
Yeah.
from, I know I'm the stupid kid, to I'm going to make some money to prove to you knuckleheads that
Mm-hmm.
I am somebody. And then once I proved it, it was kind of like, well, now what?
Right. Right.
What's
Well, I
left?
can tell you one thing, Gary. You sure have you sure have proved that, because what you've done and what you're doing, and what you're bringing to the to the world with your books, your training, your teaching, your consulting, is first class. And there's so many people that need that, whether they know they need it or not yet, right? And
Right.
and that's a question. How does a client out there, potential client of Gary, recognize, I think I need some help, because I think I know what I'm doing, and I've been doing this for 27 years. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. I ran this business, but I think that's got to be a hard thing for some people, harder for some than others, right? To recognize, I don't know what I'm doing here. Particularly, I need some help. How can you help somebody walk through the steps it might take to go, I think I need to call Gary?
That's a great question, Randy. And it's something that we probably spend some time on almost every week. And one of the reasons is simply this: when I started out in the coaching business, I started the podcast about the same time, back in 2018, 2019 officially. The thing that was unique to me is I thought I would sit down with somebody one on one and we'd work through some of their business problems. Today, systems and processes are 20%. We're rebranding right now. The iceberg is our brand logo that you'll see coming. 20% of an iceberg is above the waterline,
Mm-hmm.
80% below. 20% that we at GBC focus on is systems and processes. You got to have those.
Right.
But 80% is what we really zone in on once we got the top 20% taken care of. And that's where this book comes in. There's other materials. I have a partner that Ray Gage has written a wonderful leadership program, Leading from the Inside. That'll be out by the end of the year. The program's already out and we're taking people through it. It's just the book going along with it will be out by the end of the year. But what we have decided to do, one, I will never just do coaching sessions with anyone to get their money. I don't care if it's a 6-month, a 12-month contract. We sign contracts, so there's clear expectations on what people are doing, but we rip them up. Even if we're feeling we're under serving, it's not going to happen. And we'll go back to that because we come up against with clients all the time, and they're always like, well, we had a coach and it didn't work. And we're like, well, let's do a 90-day trial. Let's just, here's what we're going to start with. And if we can hit certain markers, then we'll start talking about a 12-month contract. And so we'll work into a lot of that. But the other thing I've noticed is, back to your question, is it really comes down to understanding that I believe all of us, for the most part, really are created equal. I mean, there may be some physical attributes. Certainly certain people are gifted mental or just in certain level of intelligence and learning that's maybe easier and can do certain things. But across the board, we all have more ability than what we really master and achieve. I don't think that I'm any brighter of a person today than I was when I was 10, 12 years old, as far as my capabilities to learn. It's just, it took me some years to figure out what my abilities were, just because I knew what I realized was I was better at screwing around and getting out of the work than I was doing it.
Yeah.
So I was very creative. I just wasn't utilizing it in a positive and a healthy way. So we really have started creating materials. So you can really start with this book. You can start for free completely listening to podcasts to little, we'll sit down and just do 5 and 10 minute rants and put them out there. There'll be some on our website. More and more of that stuff's coming. So there's a lot of free stuff out there, and it is exactly what it is. It's free. So you're not going to probably have life altering results from any of that. But what I hear so often is people will say, yeah, I've been listening to your stuff and I like what you're saying. And some of that's taken them 6 months, a year, 2 years. And then they're finally, we'll cross paths just somewhere in travel, or they'll finally make that phone call or send an email going, hey, would you have time to visit? We'd really like to discuss some of these things. So part of our process of creating all these materials are so that we can try to figure out price points for different people. There are startup businesses, if they're grossing 100 grand the first year, which we have happened, they cannot possibly afford to pay for me to work with them one-on-one.
Right.
But I can give them some resources at a very affordable cost. If they really zone in on a couple of things, they can scale that business to get to a certain point. HR services. I mean, Heather does a lot of her HR. She does a lot of disc assessments. They're smaller price points, but they're very necessary in a business to have your job descriptions, your handbooks, set up your benefits, things like that. And so we try to really create those price points where people can afford to at least start working on certain things. And then we try to throw a lot of material out here like this. We also try to really align with people like you and a few others out there that really have great guests on, because here's the bottom line. Somebody's went through this already.
Right.
I'm really not creating anything new, but I know I have an audience that if I write this book, it's going to resonate because of my story, just like what you said in the beginning. So that's kind of the process where we're at. So if people are wanting to check us out, I think Wes put my website up there. They can go to that website. They can learn a lot about us and buy the book and get started that way.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's as we wind down here, because you've been very generous with your time. I can tell you, like I said earlier, the book is incredible, and I've got to know you and your partner Ray has been on the podcast before, and when his book is ready to go, we'll bring him on too to talk. Should ask questions. What have we missed today as we kind of wind down here? Outside of the fact, just buy the book. But anyway, and you're going to love it. I can tell you that right now. And I recommend a fair amount of books in my life because I like to read and I love to know good authors. And I've been blessed to get to know a lot of really, really good ones. But I don't recommend them if I don't like them. I'll be brutally honest. I just don't, because that would be this, I don't know if unethical is the word, but no, not
hypocritical,
very honest.
maybe.
Hypocritical, right. Not very honest. But what did we miss today before we get out of here and you get back to making some money or something?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that out of the 12 steps, what I do is take the 12 steps and break it into a chapter. The one thing, chapter 7 is just the power of failure. And I think so often when we look at failure, we just look like this is an end to, we screwed up. We started this business. We failed at it. Now we've got to go do something else. We're going to have to go work for somebody else. I would challenge you this: if you do start over, now you're starting over with experience. The first time you started with no experience. Now you know a lot of what not to do. So that's very powerful. And then a lot of that can be how you think of yourself. The next one is the power of forgiveness, is the very next chapter. And the reason I put those in that order is simply we often screw up. Outside of the fact that some of us men just are not very smart always. But the bottom line is we don't hold one mistake is not a career-ending mistake.
Right.
It can be really big, but we can recover out a lot of from a lot of those. And it goes on down through a bunch of different things. The last chapter in the book is the power of appreciation. I will tell you, I have learned this the hard way. Gratitude and appreciation to other people and extending that has absolutely been the biggest multiplier I've ever had in my life. Once I can start to be truly grateful for Randy for having a successful podcast and successful sales career, and I can be happy for, client A and B and C. And what's crazy is some of these young men are having success way past what I did at their age. Mm-hmm. But am I going to become disappointed and become an arrogant jerk because the things I learned from all the mistakes I've made? No, you can't. You've got to have gratitude and be happy for those people. And so those are the things that I look at. I think gratitude in life in general goes a very, very long way. I think there's such a selfishness. You'd mentioned politics. I usually try to stay as far away from that as I can. Right. But, just the fact if there was just gratitude and working together, we'd solve a lot of problems in this country and in the world in a hurry if we decided to figure out the whole team aspect instead of how we're trying to look out for old number one. So
right on. Great advice. Great advice. Well, Gary, thank you very much. Again, like I said, I can't recommend the book enough. It's very good. Until we meet again, man, I always appreciate you. I appreciate everything you do. Appreciate your friendship, and just thanks for being on, man.
Well, hey, thanks for having me, Randy. I just appreciate it very much, and thank you for sharing this and doing this episode to promote the book. There'll be a workbook coming, so you can follow me out on social media pages and wherever. Look it up on our website by the end of the year, and we'll have a video series you can purchase to go through it if you want to work through it with your team. And we also, I will take people through it, as well as we have other coaches that'll do it as well. So
great.
Thanks, man. I appreciate everything you're doing out there.
You as well, brother. Thank you, my man. Cheers. All right. Gary Bontrager, the host or co-host with Heather of Mindset Growth Podcast, author of this great book. Seriously, I recommend books I believe in. I've read it, every page, and a little bit of went back and forth a couple of times because there were some things I wanted to reread. Really, really that good. So for now, I'm going to go on to the next step of my day of loving what I do and doing what I love, because that is important. Remember, live it, love it, and most importantly, I think, is own it. It's your life. Take responsibility, good, bad, or indifferent. Take responsibility, own it, and move on. And while you're at it, go make today your best day ever. Till tomorrow. Cheers, my friends.